I was obsessed with this Russian browser MMO as a kid, so I thought, what if I went back and played it again almost 20 years later? I played this game every day for an entire week, and during this time I got my first professions, leveled up my character, joined the clan, and grinded. A lot. So let's take a look at this browser MMO and see why it was one of my first ever game addictions and how it holds up in 2025. But before we dive in, let me quickly tell you about the game. If you're not from a post-Soviet country, there's a good chance you've never heard of Legend: Legacy of the Dragons. It's a Russian browser MMO that launched in 2006 and eventually expanded to English, Polish and French versions. At its peak it had about 8 million registered users. The gameplay? It's a turn-based MMORPG where you level up, grind, unlock new gear, explore dungeons and fight in PvP, the usual stuff. But what made it unique was the faction system. So there were two races, Magmars and humans, and they hate each other. So each race has its own territory on two other sides of the continent. Each area has special zones where you can actually meet and fight the other side. This two-faction thing gave you the feeling that we all love in Eastern Europe, having a common enemy. Bruh. If you were a Magmar, you were mostly interacting with other Magmars and you all hated humans. Sounds fun, right? The game had a bunch of other interesting and unique mechanics. But what made it good was the element of community. This was the true magic of the first MMORPGs in my opinion. The random discussions in the general chat, the first time you join a clan, and the first friends and enemies you make. But how does this game hold up in 2025? For this video, I registered a brand new character on the English server. I will walk you through my experience playing the game and I'll talk about the mechanics as they open up. As I said, there are two races available, humans and Magmars. I always played Magmars because they look badass. And I mean, look at the teeth. A few clicks later, the legendary Lorenal Bulekan was born, ready to dominate all the 12 players still left on the server. After spending about 1 hour in the tutorial section of the game, fighting my first monsters and doing the first few fetch quests, I was already at level 2. The progression is a lot faster than I remember when I was playing the game as a kid. I feel like it took a lot longer to level up back then. Or maybe I was just too busy running around doing stupid things back then. In the first few hours of the game, you are introduced to some of its core mechanics. Fighting, traveling to other locations, using the inventory, equipping items and using them in fights. So let's take a second to talk about the fighting mechanics of this game because they're so good. The fighting looks very simplistic on the surface but has a lot of depth to it. From a first glance it's simple. You have 3 attack directions, high, mid and low attack. You also have the option to block, which reduces the damage you take from enemies, but also the damage you do to them. What makes the fights interesting are the additional mechanics, most of which resolve around the limited time you have to take a turn. Let me explain. Every time it's your turn, you have a limited time to make your move, usually less than a minute. You can take more than one action during your turn. You can drink an elixir, you can summon your mount or other creatures to help you fight, and you can attack, all on the same turn. Because of the limited time you had to take your turn, you actually had to think fast and plan ahead. This was pretty exciting and made the fighting genuinely enjoyable, which was pretty important because there's a lot of fighting and a lot of grinding in this game. But we'll get to that later. All of these are mechanics that you get access to pretty much instantly. As you level up, you get access to bows, which you can use to cast special spells, and at higher levels you even get magic attacks. Another mechanic that adds depth to the fighting is that almost any fight can be joined by more allies and more enemies. Even in the starter locations, you can start a fight and have one or more other mobs join in. For example, I was attacked by this level 2 skeleton and then a level 3 skeleton joined. Now, it's not a big problem in starter locations, but later on in the game, having a second or third mob joining your fight made it almost impossible to win by yourself. So in this case, you'd write in the local chat or ask your friends to come and join your fight. The loot system works in a way that makes it worthwhile for players to help you, because if they do more damage than you in a fight, they get all the loot. There are lots of other mechanics related to fighting, but you can see how a simple 3-directional attack and block system on the surface can hide a lot of depth. Another interesting mechanic that makes dying actually scary is that when you die, your equipment loses durability and sometimes you can even get injured. These injuries have negative effects, for example losing 1 HP every 2 seconds in a fight, but worst of all, they take up a slot of your equipment and that doesn't allow you to equip that piece of equipment. So how do you deal with these injuries? Well, that's where professions come in, and one of them is a healer that can heal these injuries for other players. I know, it's very overwhelming. I'm also overwhelmed coming back to this game 20 years later, but these are just the mechanics you encounter literally in the first few days of playing. But let's go back to my character for now. So after about 2 hours in total, I finished the tutorial and finally got to my faction's capital called Dartrong. Man, this place still feels like home. Each race has a capital city, and here you have all the facilities in one place, such as a bank, your profession master, arena, and so on. So that's your hub where everyone is. Back in the day, there were literally hundreds, if not thousands of people in the capital at all times. The local chat was flooded with messages of noobs asking for help, or experienced players gathering groups for dungeons or PvP, people advertising their clans, and just randomly chatting. But enough nostalgia, it's time to get Lorenal Bulecan to level 3 and equip the awesome starter set that I have waiting in my inventory. So I did a few quests, discovered more regions and NPCs, and fought more monsters. A lot more monsters. After a while, I finally hit level 3. Yay! Now, level 3 is exciting for a few reasons. The first is that at level 3 you can finally equip the first 6 pieces of a set for a certain class. Equipping 5 pieces of the same class gives you stat boosts, which are very useful, but we'll talk about classes in a minute. But before that, the second reason level 3 is exciting are professions. You can get your first 2 professions at level 3. Anyway, let's get back to classes. There are 3 main class archetypes in this game, and they are all based on random chances to dodge, block, and inflict critical damage in battles. So we have 3 classes. Crit, your classic DPS class. It has high damage, high chance of critical damage, but low health. This class uses two-handed weapons like hammers and two-handed axes. Dodge, the equivalent of hunter-assassin classes in other RPGs. This class has average damage and survivability, plus a high chance to dodge. Good all-rounder class. Block is your typical tank class, high health, low damage, high chance to block. The 3 classes worked on a rock, paper, scissors principle, where one class was effective against another class and weak against the third. That made every class viable and needed in all groups. I always like to play support classes in MMOs, so in this game I always went with the tank. Now let's talk about professions. There are 9 professions in this game. You can have 3 professions at the same time. There are 6 starter professions that can be grouped in 3 sets that work great together. The first set is Herbalist and Alchemist, the second set is Geologist and Jeweler, and the third is Fisher and Sorcerer. The way these professions work are, one of them allows you to gather resources and the other to craft stuff using these resources. For example, the Herbalist can gather herbs and then use the Alchemist profession to craft potions. The developers were also smart about building a balanced economy. To craft anything useful, you needed ingredients from other professions. For example, to craft a useful potion, you needed ink from a fish, which can only be made by a fish sorcerer. But to craft the potion itself, you needed the alchemist profession. That resulted in people teaming up to help each other, but this also helped create an economy where you could make money with any profession. But remember I said 9 professions and we only talked about 6 so far. The other 3 professions are a little bit more advanced and they were harder to get and they kinda had more to do with the player interaction. So the professions were Locksmith, Healer and Executioner. The Locksmith could open closed chests that some mobs dropped as a loot. Remember I mentioned that you could get injured in battle? Well, the last 2 professions are related to that. As you can probably guess, the Healer can heal your injuries so you don't have to wait for them to pass by themselves. And the Executioner was the most fun profession if you ask me. With this profession, you could attack players of your own faction and give them injuries. I remember that Executioners would offer their services in exchange for money in the chat. For example, if someone stole your loot, you could pay a high-level Executioner to attack them and leave them injured for the next 24 hours, unless they wanted to pay a high-level healer to heal their injury. The professions were super fun and helped create a fun and healthy game economy, but also unforgettable player interactions. But let's get back to my character for now. I made reaching level 4 my next milestone. To be honest, I wasn't sure about this, as this required a lot more grinding than the first 3 levels, but I was actually enjoying the game so much that I decided to put in the time and get to level 4. The reason why I initially wanted to reach level 4 is the PvP dungeons. But why level 4? Because the dungeons are instanced and players are grouped by levels. So levels 3 and 4 were grouped together, so if I was level 4, I had a better chance at winning. Spoiler, I never managed to get into a dungeon because there aren't enough people playing. I spent a bunch of time doing more quests, and then I realized that the fastest way to level up is actually just by killing mobs. They give you an overpowered set of equipment that you can equip at level 3, so that lets you easily kill monsters that are 1 or 2 levels higher than you. So I spent the next few days literally killing hundreds of mobs, thinking that I'm doing this for a reason, to get into PvP dungeons and dominate. Well, that didn't happen. But something even more unexpected happened. I joined a clan. I was farming monsters when I saw a message in the chat. It was someone advertising their clan. I decided to reach out and join. The most unexpected thing was that everyone in this clan was speaking German.
Hello, mein Freund.
A Russian browser MMO made in 2006 has clans of Germans playing 20 years later. That's so unexpected. I tried interacting with them in English, but everyone ignored me, or the best they did was replying to me in German. Although there were about 60 people in the clan, I saw the same 5 to 10 people that were active every day. It seems that for some reason the game became popular among a niche German audience, but I guess I'll never know the full story unless I learn German because, like I said, literally everyone ignored my messages in English. So I spent a few hours every day for the next 2 days to get to level 4 and did pretty much nothing else except just killing monsters. The whole time I was thinking that as soon as I reach level 4, I'll do a few dungeons and that'll keep my interest in the game even after I'm done making the video. Well, eventually I did reach level 4, but because I rushed it so much, I kinda lost all interest in the game. If the first few days I was thinking, maybe I'll actually stick around and play it for a while. In the last few days, I started noticing all the negative things. It became obvious that this game is dead, as much as the remaining players don't want it to be. Because the game was made by Russians, the Russian server has the most support. They have a downloadable game app with a bunch of extra features, they have a mobile app, and they have a lot more content. Because the game probably doesn't make much money for the developers, it looks like they're doing the bare minimum to keep it alive, and even less so for the non-Russian servers. You can clearly see that they're lazy because they didn't even translate all the text. Yes, in the English version of the game, you occasionally see Russian text in quests or item descriptions. By the time I reach level 4, I have already decided that I won't play this game probably ever again. So here it is, a quick story of how I randomly remember the game I played as an 8-year-old kid, how I went back to it and had fun for the first few days, and how I realized that some things are just better left as memories.